Welcome to Authored by Us, a podcast celebrating children's books about characters of color or of different cultural experiences, and the authors who bring these diverse works to life. Each week, we invite you to join us as we turn the pages of these bookshelf gems and hear from their creators who understand that stories of diverse experience truly come to life when authored by us. Here's your host, Zenzi Hodge.
Greetings and welcome back, listeners. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Authored by Us. In the opening of our podcast, we share that we celebrate diversity, which is highlighted in books featuring characters of color or characters of different cultural experiences. And in the past, we've talked with authors whose books feature children or characters of color. They are telling stories of characters from different places and even sometimes characters who speak different languages. But what about those characters who learn or express themselves differently? If representation matters, then books that allow children whose experience includes communicating differently due to a speech or language difference or engaging with others differently due to sensory or processing, then these children should be able to see themselves in the pages of the books that they read as well. And this week's author is making a way for this to happen for children and parents worldwide. Gin Noon Spaulding is an author, teacher, speaker, and a mom who helps families and organizations gain understanding, learn tools of accommodation, and find true acceptance for children with sensory issues. By doing so, the child, family, and organization can excel aside from the differences. Gin is originally from Tullahoma, Tennessee, where she began her love for writing. It all started when she would listen to wonderful, funny, and enchanting stories told to her from family members, especially her mom. Gin was recruited to teach school in Louisville, Kentucky, and she has been happy to call Louisville home for the last 29 years. Her book series, The Adventures of LiLi, introduces readers to and follows the adventures of a young girl who has a difficult time communicating her wants and needs due to sensory issues and also a speech delay. Thank you for joining us on the show, Gin, and welcome.
Thank you. It is a pleasure being here today.
I'm excited to talk with you just because it's so great just to hear you and your passion for your book and what you write about. But there's also so much knowledge that you have that you can share with our audience. So thank you really for being here with us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. You're lovely. Your podcast is amazing. I can't wait to see it just blow up. It's just wonderful. I love it.
Oh, well, I'm honored. So tell us about your book, The Adventures of LiLi. And I mentioned that it's a book series. So The Adventures of LiLi is a book series.
Yes.
But tell us about the first book in the series, The Adventures of LiLi, A Miracle at Bates Memorial.
Right. So The Adventures of LiLi is just about the whole thing. The first book, A Miracle at Bates Memorial, is an introduction to LiLi and our family and the things that she likes. And it's also the introduction to the sensory issues that she has. So and then the second book is called Picture Perfect Not. It's about visual sensory issues. So it's about a specific sensory issue. And at the back of that book, I have like a checklist of some things that the parents can look for to see if their child might have a sensory issue, visual sensory issue. And so then the third book is called Jump a Ween. And that is about sensory issues to proprioceptive sensory issues. And so a lot of people aren't aware of proprioceptive sensory issues. It's a hidden sense, and it has to do with force or, think about your body in space. A lot of those children, they don't have much body awareness, basically. And so that one book 3 is about that. And then book 4, No Kiss, No Hug, is about sensory issues to touch, and that one's deeply personal because it's about my parents, about Tullahoma, and my dad died like 4 years ago, so it's real personal to write about that book. And it was about how Malia hated hugs and kisses, and she was all anxious thinking about the hugs and kisses her me mom pops are going to give her because they like kisses more than Christmas. Like it's Christmas Day. And so and like I said previously, each book has a checklist in the back. So except for the first one, which was the introduction.
Now, you and I've talked about the fact that not everyone is aware of sensory issues. I happen to be aware of some sensory issues and some additional processing issues because as a parent, you encounter lots of children.
Mm-hmm.
But some of our listeners may not be familiar. So, can you tell us specifically what sensory issues are or what they encompass?
I would gladly tell you. So, sensory issues, think about your five senses. So, your seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, and hearing. Okay. Those are five senses. And then we have the two hidden senses, which I shared with you, proprioceptive, and the other hidden sense is vestibular. But it's where you're oversensitive or undersensitive to the stimuli in your environment. So, as you know, we take in information to our brains based on our senses. Like if we touch the hot stove, ouch, it's hot. We learn never to touch it again because it's hot. It's red. It's fiery. Or that's how we take in our information. So when a person has sensory issues and they're oversensitive or undersensitive, think about the tag in the back of your shirt, how annoying that is to some people it doesn't bother, but a lot of people it does. Or the nails on the chalkboard, or their foods that don't quite taste right in your mouth, the texture is off or whatever. And then it could be one way, one extreme or the other. Like vestibular is like with your balance. So usually people that have vestibular sensory issues, they don't like to be upside down. They don't like to, they have difficulty with balance. They're clumsy. They have all those kind of issues, or they're the opposite. My daughter loved to be upside down. She wants to be an astronaut. All of that was great for her. So it's one extreme or the other with sensory issues. It can be. And just because a person has a sensory issue does not mean that it rises to a disability or a diagnosis. It doesn't always rise to the level of a diagnosis. But if you are finding that you have, your child is 18 years old and only eats 10 foods, which I know people like that, then that is where it's starting to take over your life. It's starting to really affect you. Then you need to get some help. If you see that it's taking over your child's life or they can't learn, then you need to get some help. And they have all kinds of therapies for that. You can go and get yourself evaluated. You can go to an OT. There are different things you can do to help with these sensory issues.
Now, you sort of teased about it because we've heard you mention LiLi, and then we've also heard you mention Malia. So
Mm-hmm.
while there's some authors who have books and their characters don't have names, and some have books where their character is inspired by someone else, your book, The Adventures of LiLi, is actually based on a LiLi in your life, a real life LiLi. So tell us about your LiLi and why you developed this book series in her honor.
Thank you. Yes, my daughter's name is Malia, but her nickname is LiLi. And these books so far are all true. These are things that happened in our lives, what we've gone through. And I will tell you, I have always loved to write. I was in the Louisville Writing program, and it's with the National Writing Project, not program project, sorry, National Writing Project. And it's part of that. And I actually wanted to write a book about my grandmother. I never aspired to write books, children's books. And so almost 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I had a very difficult class I was teaching. And I was like, praying because I knew I had enough years to retire. So I was praying to God, asking him, and he showed me that it's time for you to go, which is fine. And so in the meantime, he's, in my spirit, he said, write books about sensory issues. I said, wow, that's a good idea. And I was like, I don't looked it up. There aren't a lot of books about sensory issues. Sensory processing disorder, maybe not just sensory issues. And I was like, that is a wonderful idea. And I said, I can base it on Malia and what we've gone through. And that's what I did. I stepped out on faith. And I will credit my first publisher, which was Tony Mutcherson with BFF Publishing, because I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta, and we have the Mids Up Facebook page. Shout out to Mids Up. And so I went on there and I was like, oh, I'm so excited. I'm retiring. I'm going to be the best soror, the best wife, the best mama, the best this and that I can be. And I'm going to start on my book. I'm going to write a book. And she's like, well, soror, if you need any help, I'm a publisher and I can help you. Now, she'd only been publishing like a year. So, but, as a matter of fact, I think I was the first person that had a Kindle book that I wanted to do. Was with that. I was her first client that did that, if I'm not mistaken. And so, yeah, I think I was the first. And so anyway, she had hardly ever gotten on the page, and I hadn't been on the page that much either. So it was like, it was a God thing. It was meant for her because, I could have just written the book and it could have just stayed on my shelf. You know what I mean? Or in my computer. But I credit her with helping me get it out there. And so my second book is self-published, and then my third and fourth book are through Author Academy Elite, which is like a hybrid between self-publishing and traditional publishing. That's who I went with those last two.
People think that just putting a book together is I'm writing it and that's it. There are a lot of things behind the scenes that really bring that book to life. You mentioned your publisher, but there's also your illustrator, because as I read The Miracle at Bates Memorial, it's set in your church, and your church is obviously a very important part of your life. It's a part of your community.
Mm-hmm.
And in true form, you depicted a Black church experience. And there was just like one illustration that I saw, and I was like, okay, this is definitely a Black church, because there were the church ladies in their church hats, and they were very fashionable. The colors were very bright and vibrant. And your illustrations didn't just look real. There's a character in there that looks just like you. So if someone know who you are and they've seen a photo of you and they look at the illustration, it looks exactly like Gin. So tell us about how you found your illustrator and how you were able to have them bring true life to your book, because you were depicting real life people.
Okay, thank you. Well, I actually found my illustrator from a Facebook group I'm in. It's called Children's Books by African American Illustrators and Authors. I think that's the full name. And I'm a moderator of that page now. Of that group
you're both in that same group, right?
Yeah, and so I went on there and I just expressed that I needed an illustrator and if anyone could recommend. And so some people came forward and that they were interested or whatever. And so, they contacted me through my DMs or whatever. And I asked them if they would be willing to do a little mock up for $5. Some people were like, I don't work for $5. I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to insult you. Okay. Anyway, I digress. I was like, okay. And so, but anyway, the young lady that eventually won out is actually from Pakistan, because I was interested in hiring an African American person, which is why I was on the African American board. But she's from Pakistan, and her name is Arana Haj Iqbal, and she did my first 3 books.
Well, I know that the path to publishing is not always easy, particularly when you have decided to do this on your own. And so you've mentioned to us that you began with a publisher and then you self-published, and then now you're using another opportunity to publish. And so there's always some iteration that goes into the process. And I think a whole part of that is growing. We kind of see what works for us because our
Mhm.
books are extremely personal. We birthed
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
And so it's not just something that, we kind of picked up. It's a creation of ours. And so we have an idea of what we want it to sound like. And that's why we picked the words that we selected, what we want it to look like. And then we know what we want, how we want it to be presented to our audience, so
Right.
I think that's really important. And because it also, your book, it lives on. But while books always tell stories, whether they're historically based, they're fictional or non-fictional, we're still telling some sort of a story for someone else to consume. And in your books, you are telling a story, yes, but you're telling about the story of your personal life, about your
Right.
family very specifically. And so I think it says a lot when you share so openly and so honestly. I think that there are sometimes parents, if I have a child that may learn differently from another kid, so we tend to compare how's little Jim doing compared to Sam. And
Mhm.
so if my child is not at the place of someone else's kid, I tend to feel, oh my gosh, is something wrong? Is something wrong with me as a parent? And I think what you've done with the Adventures of LiLi is that you've put it all out there for someone else. And you've essentially also given people permission to say it's okay.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
here's how we make it better. And for children who have sensory issues, they see themselves, but their
Mhm.
friends who may not have a sensory issue or may just seem like a garden variety kid, they see, oh, wait a minute, my friend who has a speech delay or my friend who has a processing disorder, this is what's going on and this is how we interact. And I think that's a very brave thing, and it's a needed thing for us to be able to discuss as parents.
Oh, honey, you are so right. I I don't know if you've read my 3rd book yet, the
This
Jumpaween.
Jumpaween.
Yes, in there, it was so hard to write. I mean, I think I even cried writing that book, because in that book, we went to the Hallelujah party, which was the alternative Halloween, and Malia liked
Mhm.
to jump on the jumpy. She just wanted to jump on the jumpy. She couldn't wait to get in. We got to the jumpy. She was jumping. Well, she didn't want to get off, and we had to drag her out. She was crying and screaming, but it was sensory overload. I didn't know that. She was jumping and could focus on the jumping, but when we pulled her off, the sensory overload was back. And as soon as we took her out of the gym, she stopped all that crying and kicking and everything. She was calm because it was over. I didn't know. And then people were looking and staring, and it was so hurtful. And it wasn't just, it wasn't like, okay, Jen, your church, but it was a community event. And I just remember just feeling so sad. But in my books, Malia is telling the story from her perspective. So in the book, as a matter of fact, if you don't mind, could I read a little, just that little,
Absolutely.
just a um, okay, let's see. Okay, I kick, scream, cry, and yell. I just can't help it. It is way too loud and crowded in that gym. Now that I am off the jumpy, the noise is way louder. I know my mommy is talking to me, but I can't hear her. All the noises. the voices are all mixed up together. I can't tell my mommy's voice from any other voice. It is so painful. All I can do is scream, cry, and kick. I just want the noises to stop. When I was jumping, I didn't even hear or feel anything. Now the pain is just all over me like a heavy blanket. I can't tell my mommy. All I can do is have this LiLi let down. Um, and then, okay, and then so it goes on, but then, okay, um, my daddy goes to get our truck while my mommy puts on my costume. She looks like she's going to cry. Maybe it is because people were looking at us and some people were whispering too. I didn't pay attention to them because I was in so much pain. I wonder what they said. Did they make my mommy cry? So, yeah, I want people to know that it's not okay to stare. And if you want to look, say something like, this is what I do. I was like, I said, honey, it gets better. It gets better. It's going to get better. Be encouraging. Don't stare and gawk and, what's that? No, don't do that.
Or criticize and say, don't you know how to control your child?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Someone once said, it's time to call the nanny in. It was funny. I can laugh now, but the time I was like,
oh my God.
Yeah. What was her name? Nanny. What was Nanny?
Fran Drescher?
Yeah. Not Fran Dresser. No, the nanny. The show, The Nanny, that used to come on. She used to come and observe the kids and then
So you're not talking about the nanny series. You're talking about the nanny lady that would come and do interventions for unruly children.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah. It's time to call the nanny. I said, I wanted to curse her out. I mean, these people didn't even know. This was in we were going to the doctor one day. And again, I didn't fully know about sensory issues. And so I kept saying, Leah, stop doing this, stop doing that. Do you want a spanking? And the fact that I did not like hit her hand or whatever, it was like gave her full reign to like, I can do more and more and more until it was just ridiculous. Right. Wow. And I spanked her. I spanked her. Okay. Y'all come for me. How horrible it is to spank children. But yeah, let me tell you something. After I just gave her a couple of whacks on the behind, she was like a whole new person. It was like, you can't, and that's something you cannot tell. If you say you're going to do something, you have to do it. If you say, if you don't stop misbehaving, we're going to leave, you need to leave. You can't just tell them that. And if you know that you don't want to leave, then you need to say, okay, if you do this again, we're going to have to go outside for a minute. We're going to have to leave this area a minute. Instead of just saying we're going to leave. And yeah, because you just got to be consistent at all times. But yeah, the nanny.
I love how open and honest you are about the experiences that you've had and your willingness to share that with our audience. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. Authored by Us is made possible by listeners like you. We thank you for your support. Now back to the show.
So we're back with Gin Noon Spaulding. I love how The Miracle at Bates Memorial ends because LiLi talks about mom getting it at the end. Now, I've read the book, so I understand what she's talking about. But with mom getting it at the end, I think you're sending a powerful message to parents and to young readers. So tell us about what you were trying to impart with that final piece, with mom getting it at the very end of the book.
When I was saying that, when Malia said, mommy gets it, it's just that her mom, her dad, that we understand her, that we understand that the way that we wanted her to go was too loud, too crowded. It was too bright. It was too much for her. And looking back when I was writing this book, I almost got emotional again because all the child wanted to do was go out the door. Why didn't I just take her out the door? Why did I just want to insist on going my way? But, I know I didn't say it's the Holy Spirit in the book, but I know it's like the Holy Spirit that said, Jen, look at your way and look at her way. And when I did, I was like, oh, because my way was crowded. It was loud. It was horrible. And then her way, there was no one going that way. Zero. So I learned that day, and so I learned and I understood her more. And just, that day, and then, the time that in Jump a Ween, when all that happened, I stayed at the house, and Larry, my husband, took her trick-or-treating, which we normally didn't do, but he took her trick-or-treating. I was there, and I was just in tears talking to a teacher friend of mine. In the book, it said a therapist, but in real life, it was my teacher friend whose son had sensory processing disorder. So he had all of his senses were misaligned, and so I don't know. I've learned so much on the journey, and I am glad that I finally did get it, even though it took a long time, because these kids look like everybody else. They look just, everyday kids, and they are everyday kids. They just have sensory issues. And I really believe we all have sensory issues. We all have something. Some people don't like their food touching. Some people don't like certain ways, the things, like I said, the tag in the back of your shirt. And, some people don't like to hug and kiss people. Yeah. And some people don't like, someone, I just did a talk last Saturday, and one of my friends, she said that her growing up, her brother didn't like to take baths. And she said her mother didn't know that. She said, would that have been? I said, yep, that's a sensory issue. I know of a story when Malia was getting her contacts, or the glasses, I was telling them about the books, and this lady said, oh, my daughter had sensory issues and to touch. And she said that she said that one time she said, Mom, can I do the bath water myself? And she said, okay. And she was like in the kitchen, monitoring her. And so she was in the bathtub, and the water was, she couldn't really regulate that it was hot.
Oh, wow.
And so she's like, oh my God. So she turned on the cold water and was splashing the cold water on, to cool it down. And she said that her daughter was like, you're hurting me. You're hurting me with the cold water. That's painful. Wow. I mean, I was like, wow. So yes. And and then a story that I heard from a lady was that her daughter had sensory issues to smell. And so that morning she had eaten something with peanut butter on it. And so she flossed her teeth, had lunch, had dinner. And that night she went to kiss her little girl goodnight. And her little girl was like, ew, Mommy, you've been eating peanut butter from the whole day. She could still smell it.
Wow.
So I always try to tell people, think of, when it's over, not when it's under, but when it's over, when it's, no, I guess it would be undersensitive. When it's undersensitive or oversensitive, but anyway, but when it's like, wow, just so much like that it is, it's like a superpower. Just think, you have super hearing, you have super smell, you have supervision. This one little boy told me in a talk I gave to a school that one time he had his earphones on and they were up to 10, and his parents didn't think he could hear. So they were talking about his birthday and all the surprises he was going to get. He heard every word. He could hear. Yeah. And I wanted to say something else about sensory issues. Okay. So when we have issues with our vision, you and I both wear glasses. So when we have issues with our vision, we can put our glasses on and, hey, 2020, but we can't do that with other parts of the body. We can't, So we as people, we need to just try to be more understanding, treat others where you would want them to treat you. And I will say this, if you don't deal with your child's sensory issues when they're young, it can take over their, I mean, here's another story. When after I wrote my first book, Malia and I were at a Latin conference, a regional Latin conference in Northern Kentucky. And so we have some friends that we were visiting. My friend that's from Tullahoma, Tennessee, he and his wife live in that area. So we met for lunch, and I was telling him about my book, and his wife was like, I think that's what's wrong with my brother. He's always had these sensory issues, and it's overwhelming. I told him that I think he needs to maybe seek some help because he's having a hard time with his job, with his everything because of these sensory issues. It's like it was taking over his life in a negative way. So, I mean, so if, and sometimes we need help, and it's okay, because, I mean, it's also been reported that some of these people with sensory issues, they can hear things that other people can't hear. Think about how that can make you mentally. It's like, you didn't hear that? No, what do you mean? What are you talking about? I mean, people, you're thinking that you are insane, because you're hearing things people can't hear. You're seeing things that people can't see. You're smelling things people can't smell. It's just something. Or it can be the opposite. You can't smell. Everybody else can smell. You can't.
But you can't.
Right. It can be, it's amazing. It's just so, I just try to learn all I can about it because I'm writing these books. And, eventually I'm going to have to write books about sensory issues that Malia didn't have. So that's when I'm going to have to make up some stuff, and I'll have to tell you one that I've made. You want to hear about what I'm thinking about for a Christmas book?
Absolutely. So tell us what's next for The Adventures of LiLi.
Yes. So I need to write a book about smell, which she didn't have. So I'm going to totally create that. And then, what's the other one? Taste. She had no problems eating. Okay. So taste and smell, where I'm going to have to create. Well, I thought of one for Christmas. She's going to have a little friend named Matt. And so we are going to be his mom and our mom, and his mom and I are not friends. We're just associates from the preschool. So my husband isn't going to be able to go to the Christmas thing with Santa at the zoo, because we used to do that. And that's true. We did do that every year when she was little. And her husband can't go either. So I was like, oh, well, why don't we meet there, and she's pregnant. Okay. So,
oh, wow.
Pregnant. I was like, anyway, so her husband dropped her off, and we met, and we went there, and we're having a great time. And then her water was going to break. She's going to go into labor. I'm like, oh my God. So she has to go to the hospital, and her husband comes to get her. And then I'm like, I'll take care of Matt for you. So I have Matt with me. Okay. Not knowing about his sensory issues. To smell.
Wow.
Okay. So then I'm the queen of volunteering. So this one volunteer that I used to do was called Be a Santa to a Senior. So I'm going to have to take a gift. I'm delivering gifts to a little old lady, and he is with me, and and I was going to take Matt to his grandmother's house. So I asked if it was okay if I stopped there first. She said, oh, sure. They didn't care. So anyway, so we go to the house, and of course the lady just makes over LiLi and Matt. Okay. So then they're like, she's like, oh, come in. I've got something for you. So she leaves, and Matt's going to be like, what's that smell? And I was like, I can't decide what I want the smell to be. I don't know if I want it to be like the evergreen tree. It's because I was thinking I'd have it called "Oh, It Stinks," or I don't know, but that might be redundant. Or Christmas Stinkies. I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna. I have to make up something. But anyway, he's gonna be like, "Ooh, what's that smell? It stinks!" And I'm like, "Shh, quiet. What smell? It stinks!" And he's gonna go, and I'm trying to figure it out. I'm like, "What is it? The coffee? The what?"
You know, trying to figure it out.
And
wow.
Right. And then he's going to have a Matt meltdown. And and with my meltdowns that go across the LiLi letdown goes across the page, it's a spread. So the Matt meltdown is going to go. He had a Matt meltdown, and he's going to be kicking and screaming and crying. And so the lady comes, she said, "What's wrong?" I said, we gotta go right there. She said, "Oh, I got something for you." I said, "Just give it to Malia. We gotta go." And then as soon as we get out of the house, he's going to be like, "Hi, Kate.
So much better.
Where are we going now, Miss Spaulding?" And I'm going to be like dumbfounded, like, okay, he did all that, and now he's calm. And so we get in the car. I'm like, "Matt, what's the problem? I mean, he said, smell bad, I was like, "It stinks. It stunk." And I was like, okay. So then, and I know what it is. I'm not going to know what it was that was stinking. That's what it's going to be. So then so then we get to Granny's house, and I'm going to tell Granny what happened. And she said, "Oh, Matt has sensory issues to evergreen trees." So that's why we have artificial. I'm just making this up.
Wow.
That's why I couldn't think of what I was going to do. But that's why, because I want it to be Christmassy. So it's got to be a Christmas. But anyway, so that's why we have artificial trees. And I was like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense," because my daughter has sensory issues too. And then I don't know how to end the book. So yeah.
Well, I just love the fact that LiLi is going to have a friend. So there's another kid, and there's someone that she has something in common with.
Yeah.
And I love holiday books anyway. So that should be very exciting. So I want to make sure when that comes out, you absolutely let us know.
It's too. I waited too late. It takes, according to like different things I read, it takes a year to really do a Christmas book right. Yeah. So I really should have started like in January. But I do have another book that can be another true story. So, I'll figure out something, because I would like to maybe do another book sometime this year. But I don't know what I'm going to do yet.
Well, I have a Christmas book, and I get requests for it during the year, and I love the holidays, so I'll read it at any time of the year anyway. So it's okay. So whether your book comes out in time for the season, I know it is something that will be a great compliment to the LiLi series, and we can't wait to hear about it.
Thank you. So sweet.
Now, due to the impact of the LiLi series, you had a great feature. You're a part of a great event that's featuring your book and other authors. It's called Delta Authors on Tour. And I know you mentioned that you are a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. So tell us a little bit about Delta Authors on Tour.
Oh, gosh, it is amazing. And I am so proud and happy to be part of Delta Authors on Tour. But basically, the way that it works is that when you're an author, you pay like $25 to be part of an anthology of all the books, authors and their books. And so from the anthology, other chapters, look through there and choose authors that they want to be part of the Delta Authors on Tour that they're featuring. And so basically you go and it was supposed to be in person in 2020, but the pandemic, we had to cancel. And so now we're having it virtually. But basically you would go and you'd see the sorors and then you just they have different types, but the Delta Authors on Tour is just, it's just that part is just deltas, but there is another section where they actually open it up to the public. But anyway, so you just tell about your book, and I hadn't actually been on one yet in person. So from my understanding, this is what happens. You just go and you talk about your book, and you you talk to the source about your books, and then they purchase your book. Yay. And yeah, it's just wonderful, wonderful. And I'm just so proud and happy to be part of it. And I'm glad that they asked me to join a second time. So yeah, so it's all virtual, and that is going to be in May, I think. Yeah, it's in May the 19th, I believe. Let me double check, girl, because it's got too much going on. Not that, I mean, you would think that most of my things going on are about my daughter, because she is a senior in high school, and I'm trying to find scholarships, and I'm like working for her now, right? And it's a lot. And so my own stuff is like
kind of goes to the back burner. We get
it. Exactly. And so, but I'm pretty sure it's the 19th, because I had another event that was going to come up on the 19th, and it's another Delta event. She's like, and I told the person, and she's like, oh, I need to probably like maybe have it sooner or something. So anyway, they're working it out so I can do both. Yay!
Well, I know I'm extremely excited for you to be featured on Delta Authors on Tour, so everybody can hear more about the adventures of LiLi. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
You're listening to Authored by Us. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review so you never miss an episode. Now back to the show with your host, Zenzi Hodge.
We're back with Gin Noon talking about her book, The Adventures of LiLi. Well, her whole series, The Adventures of LiLi. So, Gin, tell us where we can find all of your books.
You can find all of my books on my website, www, of course y'all knew that, .ginnoonspaulding.com. GINNOON. See, there's two N's together. Don't get confused. GINNOON SPAULDING. GinNoonSpaulding.com. And if you can get them other places, yes, you can get them from Amazon. You can get it from books, Barnes and Noble. The last two books are there. Walmart even has my books. I was like, Walmart? Yeah. Really, Walmart? They're right. And you can get them from those places. However, if you get them from me personally, I will inscribe the book and say something nice, give you a little bookmark and a sticker. You can't get that from the other places. But still, I don't, still order whatever you have to do. But I would prefer you to order it from me so you can get all the goodies.
And not to worry, listeners. As always, we'll have links in our podcast notes. And we also have our Authored by Us bookshelf, which will take you directly to Gin's books. So there will be a link there, and it will take you directly to her website so you can purchase from her directly.
Yes, please do.
Now, Gin, you are a retired educator, and you're also an author. So what do you think inspires the next generation of writers and the next generation of educators?
Wow, that's a loaded question there. I would say the inspiration for the next generation of writers comes from just letting kids write. Just let them write. Yes, they need to learn the grammatics, the periods, the capital letters, and those things, but let them have time to just have free writing and let their imaginations flow. And, and I know when I was teaching, I tell kids, it doesn't matter if you don't have your periods or what, this is your journal, this is your writer's notebook. You just write and write whatever you want. And they're like, if they say, I don't know what to write, I said, you can write about how you dislike me or how you hate me today because I'm making you do this. I don't care what you write. Okay. Write a list of what you want to eat tonight, and then, giving them some options and just letting them write, let them be free with their writing, just encouraging them to write. And as the next educators, that's a toughie. It really is, because the climate that we're in is to blame the teacher for everything. Oh, these teachers are this, they're that, and they're the other. And I think we can, as a nation, as a society, that we need to support the teachers more. Back in the day, I'm not saying teachers were more respected than they are now. And, don't be so quick to judge or blame the teacher. Talk to your child. Find out what's going on with your child and listen to the teacher. You can even talk to the other kids in the classroom if they're friends of your family or whatever. But get a full picture of the story before you're judging and being so harsh on the teacher, because it's not always the teacher.
Gin, what has been the greatest influence on you as a writer and on your writing?
Oh man, that's hard. I would say my daughter has been just her resilience and her competitive nature and just wanting to be the best and not giving up. And I really did like books by Patricia Polacco because, one of her books, Thank You, Mr. Faulkner, was about how wonderful he was a principal and how he related to the kids and all of that. And some of the kids in her books had different issues and how she addressed them. And I really liked her as a writer and just, my baby.
Oh. Gin, it has been such a pleasure talking with you. I told you at the very beginning, I'm going to try not to laugh as much as I normally do, but I couldn't help it because it was just such a pleasure chatting with you, hearing about you personally and Malia, and then hearing about your book series, The Adventures of LiLi. So thank you so much for spreading all of this joy, warmth, and love with us on today's episode.
Oh, thank you. The pleasure has been all mine. You are a wonderful interviewer, and I just enjoyed myself. It was just amazing. I'll come back.
Absolutely. As we close the cover on this bookshelf gem, I'd like to thank our author, Gin Noon Spaulding, for being here with us to talk about her book series, The Adventures of LiLi. I would also like to thank you, our listening audience, for joining us for this episode. We invite you to come back next week as we introduce a new author telling their story. Until next time, happy reading.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Authored by Us. Every author has a story to tell, and we enjoy bringing their stories to you each week. Whether you are listening as a young reader or are sharing this podcast with the young readers in your life, we are delighted to celebrate these stories inspired by diversity and shared in the voice of their authors. Follow us on social media at Authored by Us and subscribe to our podcast using your favorite podcast app. That way you never miss an episode. Have a gem on your bookshelf that we should have on ours? Visit us online at authoredbyus.com and let us know. Until next time, happy reading.